Hello family, hello friends, and hello to my strangers that are gonna be friends. My name's Anna Maria, and I'm gonna be starting my garden journey with you guys. Um, a few things about me: I do live in New Jersey. I live in Zone 6B, 7A, depending on where in New Jersey we're speaking in regards to. But I wanted to do a YouTube channel for a few different reasons. Number one, so we could learn together, and number two, so you guys can learn from my mistakes. Now, there's a few things that I'm going to be doing different on my channel, and that's being brutally honest. No matter how bad or how good something is, I'm going to be sharing it with you guys. Now, in the past couple of years, I've had tremendous success with tomatoes. So I decided what better way to start my YouTube channel than talking about tomatoes. Now, there's a few different ways to go in regards to planting tomatoes. The first way is what people do. These are my little transplants, so they're not as big as I want them to be, but this year I decided that I wanted to start them inside under a grow light. But what a lot of people do is they take the plant and they cut off all of the bottom growth and then just plant it in the ground as far as they can up to the actual first leaf. Now, another way that you could do it, and I actually do half and half because I always like to experiment, but another way that you could do it, it's called trenching. And that's by digging a trench and putting the tomato down this way, and the stem is actually going to go up. So the root zone is actually further away than the actual flower. So it kind of gets confusing in regards to watering and where else you can plant. Let's say if you're doing different stories, because there's different ways that people garden. Some garden in small spaces, some garden in food forests. So you always got to implement what works for you. Me, myself, I have a small space garden. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 4x4s. I have a 4x12, and I have a 10x8. So I do plant in small spaces. I actually also started experimenting with aquaponics and hydroponics, but today I'm going to be talking about tomatoes. Now, the first way and the best way that I think is to show you guys, right? So let's go into it. Let's get right into it. Now, I'm going to show you both different ways. But before we start, I do want to mention that there's two different kind of varieties. There's indeterminate and determinate. Now, with determinate, that just means that the determined height is what it is, and there's no changing it. Once the fruit sets, that's the end of that plant. Indeterminate, which is usually cherry and grape tomatoes, smaller tomatoes, means that they can actually grow to be 8-10 feet tall plants. And I actually have more fun with those. So this year, the majority of my plants, besides my beefsteaks, are indeterminate. So right in front of me, I have the Sweet 100 cherry tomatoes. Like I said, they're a little smaller than I usually transplant, but we're gonna show you guys the two different ways. Now, what I like to do is I like to start off by cutting off I call them the unnecessaries. They're just taking the life away from what's necessary. So let's cut those off. And this is what you're left with. Now, with the Jiffies, the peat pellets, I like to remove the outer layer, even though they say they're biodegradable. I think it's a load, but so this is what we're left with. Now this is what I'm going to be burying down to the first set of leaves. So join me. sure you guys can see what I'm doing. I have my transplanter. And it's all the way down to the first set of leaves. Backfill. Backfill. Put some mulch around it. And you always want to water it in. The second method that we're going to go over is trenching. So same thing. I like to chop and drop, so just it's going to be mulch anyways. So I keep it on my ground. But here we are. We're left with the top. Take off the outer layer of the Jiffies. You don't have to, but that's what I do. And I dig a little trench. So this is longer than usual. But the other ones, you could just use a bulb transplanter since you're going straight down. But with the trenches, you want something that's a little longer. All right, take a look. And we're actually going to be laying it down. You want to lay it down on the ground like that, flat down. And what you want to do is backfill all the dirt into the hole. I have a lot of mulch and wood chips, so forgive me, but it's all organic matter, so it doesn't bother me. Put the leaves up, be careful. And there you have it. Just put the mulch around it. And you have yourself a trenched tomato. Now, don't forget, you always want to water those suckers in. And if you do notice, I go with high intensity spacing. I've had tremendous success and higher yields with just planting them 6 inches apart. I don't do the square foot method. I chop that in half. And there you have it. One trenched and one dug down to the first set of leaves. And that's how you plant tomatoes. Now, before I end this video, I do want to touch on one last thing, and that's how many trellises you can actually use and buy for tomatoes. This is actually called the Ultimato cage, and you can buy this at your big box store or your local hardware store for $8 to $10. I actually just use these bad boys. I love them for my beefsteak tomatoes. As you can see, that's a big beefsteaker that I got going on. But you could also DIY your own from rabbit fencing, or I don't know, get creative. That's what I like to do in my little mini farm garden. Now there's actually another one that I bought this year that I like, and I think it's called the Tomato Tower, and you could use it however you want. I actually used it as like a trellis fence, and you could see my high intensity spacing. I like to leave only 6 inches apart, and I have high success. So when you read the back of those seeds, the seed packages, just keep in mind that's from back in the day when the Industrial Revolution started and they had the big machinery. For a small space garden, 6 inches will do just fine. Now, my favorite tomato trellis this year is actually a DIY one. It's actually from shelving and T-posts. I actually just hammered in the T-posts, got the shelving, wire tied the shelving to the T-posts, and that's about it. And it's working out great. I have vigorous growth in a small amount of space. But what I wanted to talk to you about is you don't need a lot of money to start a garden. And I want to touch upon why some people shy away from gardening. It's too much money, it's too much work. It's only too much money and too much work if you make it that way. I actually got these plant clips in the beginning of the season at a dollar store for $1. And what I'm going to be showing you is how I'm going to be trellising these tomatoes on my DIY trellis. These are the easiest clips that you can get, and you could keep using them and reusing them year after year, and they actually hold up fine. They're little clips. And what I like to do is I like to keep my tomatoes, since I do plant in small spaces, I like to keep one stem going up the trellis and keeping it as neat as possible. Like you see right here, one stem up the trellis. Now it does happen sometimes that I can't help that it does top itself and you do get two big stems going up, but I try to keep it down to one. Now what I do is get the tomato, I just clip it right in, and there you have it. And all you have to do is, as it climbs up, you just do the same thing over and over and over again. So one more time, get the clip, and there you have it. One more time. Hopefully you guys can see back here. I have this one with the two. This one right here. And if you need big ones, they come with big ones as well. The bigger ones. Look at the big one right in the middle. And a small one right on the side. And it's all staked and pretty, and you could just do it for the rest of your garden. And keep in mind, it doesn't necessarily have to be tomatoes. It could be anything like cucumbers, peas, squash, anything that trellises up, beans. Get creative, have fun. It doesn't need to be a drag. I love to be in the garden. It's peaceful, it's serene, and I hope that if you don't have a garden, I encourage you to get a garden, to start a garden, even if it's a 4x4, and just leave the GMO produce in the grocery store, because I've never eaten such delicious produce. And it just has so much water content and so much flavor that you'll never get from the grocery stores. So I think that's a wrap. I hope you guys learned something, and if you didn't, if it's one thing that you can take away from today's video, is start small. Even if it's in a 2x2, a 4x4, a container garden, or a food forest. I hope you guys leave the GMO produce at the grocery store, and let's keep growing.